Hey, everybody. Welcome to the first episode of the Post Political Podcast. I'm Derek Britton, your host. This episode is brought to you by Bremen Supreme Institute, where there's basically an education group, a voluntary action, public works group, and then also a political arm that helps educate the community and change the world. Our first guest is Chase Oliver. How you doing, Chase?
I am doing fantastic. How about yourself?
I'm doing good. It just started getting cold here up in the Northeast.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's about 30 degrees today and yesterday, so it's been a little chilly, but...
Well, that's like the depths of winter here in Atlanta. So, you're not quite as bad as you're going to get, I assume. I assume it'll get a little bit colder than 30 degrees.
Oh, definitely. And there'll be a lot more snow on the ground, and it's going to be... it's going to be a tough winter, I feel. We already got like 4 or 5 inches of snow about 2 weeks ago, something like that. So
yeah, that's too much for me. So I can't be dealing with all that. I'll freeze to death down there or up there.
Yeah. No. So speaking of Georgia, I wanted to bring you on and I wanted to talk to you a little bit about your campaign you did down in Georgia and I know you built some bridges down there with some of the progressive Dems, and I'd like to hear a little bit more about it.
Oh, yeah. Well, so I ran in a race in Georgia. It was a special election. It was to fill the remaining term of the late Congressman John Lewis, who passed away this summer. And so there was a special election in September to determine who would replace him in Congress. That's actually currently headed to a runoff that happens in December. So whoever does win will be there for just a few short weeks. But I ran because the ballot access is easier in Georgia for a special election than a regular general election. I only had to pay the filing fees. I didn't have to collect tens of thousands of signatures, which is why you hardly ever see any libertarians running for Congress in Georgia. I'm only the second to ever do it. And alongside me were 6 other candidates, 5 of whom were Democrats, and one of whom I would describe as kind of a left of center independent. And so the audience that I got to speak to throughout my race was mostly a progressive Democratic audience, because those were the people who were hosting forums and those were the people who were watching those forums. So I felt like I got to spread the message of liberty to a lot of people who had never, ever heard it before in one of the bluest districts in the country.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. And I feel like, you see typically a lot of Republican, libertarian leaning Republicans, and a lot more people in the Republican Party that consider themselves, little L libertarian. And you don't see it as much kind of working with the Democratic side. And I feel like there is a very even split, but it's not really represented at higher levels of government. So how was your kind of first interaction with the Dems?
Well, it's not my first interaction with Democrats, because I'm a former Democrat. It's where I came to the Libertarian Party from. I was an anti-war Democrat in the early stages of the Iraq War and at the Afghanistan War. And then once Barack Obama got elected and everybody in the Democratic Party forgot about drone bombs and all the innocent people that war, those wars overseas were affecting, all the victims there, I kind of fell out of the Democratic Party. And that's why I found the Libertarian Party. And speaking to this audience of progressive Democrats, a lot of the messaging really is about the audience that you're engaging in, right? Like the way you get people to agree with you and to join the Libertarian Party, to become a member of the Libertarian movement, is not to have a complete litmus purity test. I preach the message of libertarianism through things that actually appeal to the left: criminal justice reform, ending cash bail, ending the militarization of our police. These are issues where, for instance, Spike Cohen, our vice presidential candidate, and Joe Jorgensen, our presidential candidate, they were leading the way on those issues, and they just weren't heard by the media. And I was lucky that I got to be in front of so many progressive eyes during that race, and kind of maybe changing the perception that some people have that libertarians are just right of center and that they only care about issues on the right. We're actually a very broad, big tent party, I think. And the way we continue to grow that is to get those people in on that first issue. If your issue is ending cash bail, for instance, let's talk about that. And then let's talk about how that ties into the greater criminal justice picture. And then you tie that into the greater picture of limited government. And then you have a new libertarian. So that was my approach. And I think it worked out pretty well in terms of messaging.
No, that's great. And it sounds, it's funny to hear your story coming in. It sounds very similar to mine. I was a Democrat as well, anti-war Democrat. I think we both kind of grew up around the post 9/11, Bush era, seeing the wars start and thinking that Obama was going to be, I voted Obama wholeheartedly the first time and, thought he was going to be anti-war and thought he was going to be better on immigration. And those two stances of his really turned me off from the Democratic Party as a whole.
And that's pretty much what happened to me. I voted Obama in 2008. It's the last major party candidate I'll probably ever vote for in my lifetime, because I'm now woken up to the fact that the duopoly is really kind of the major problem there. And what got me to Libertarian Party was, I was kind of politically homeless, and I was at Atlanta Pride in 2010, and it was the Libertarian Party that had boots on the ground. We're actually doing voter outreach. They had their candidate for governor, John Mons, who was he's a political mentor of mine. He's somebody that I look to as an example of what a great libertarian can be. And he was there actually meeting voters, meeting people, doing the outreach. And that's something that, and of course, Pride events are going to be a little bit more geared to the left, because the LGBT community, the GSM community, is what I really like to say, the gender and sexual minority community, traditionally, their voter base is towards the Democratic Party, but that's why we need to be at those Pride events. That's why we need to be preaching the message of liberty and tying it to the message of equality. And that's why I'm a member of Outright Libertarians. They're a wonderful organization. We're a charity group that is dedicated to building those bridges between the GSM community and the Libertarian Party and the Libertarian message. And I think we're doing wonderful work in that regard. And I recommend anybody who's interested, go to our website. It's outrightusa.org, and check it out. Become a member. Get involved. We need more boots on the ground. We need less keyboards, more boots on the ground is what I think the Libertarian Party really needs.
Yeah, that's really, you just did a good job explaining why I started the podcast, actually. So I want to try and bring in people who are doing things, who are trying to fight about who we should nominate in 2024. It's fun. It's great to go on social media and fight against some folks in our party or whatever. But at the end of the day, the work that we're doing outside of that, and the mutual aid programs that we're starting, and trying to do, so like VSI does, the Dulap's Packs for the Homeless. Those types of things are more impactful, in my opinion, than the electoral politics process can be, because there is some work that needs to be done there. I don't think we should abandon it totally, and I think we should build coalitions, and that's kind of the other side of the podcast. But trying to do stuff outside of the electoral politics system, I think, is going to be the big way that we bring in new people that are maybe interested in that particular mutual aid program that we're working on, that are just being introduced to liberty at that point.
Yeah, well, it's kind of a circle. It's kind of a rotating thing where, we want to run people in elections. We want to win elections. We've actually had some, we've had some great wins all over the country. We have now a state legislator for the first time in a generation, I think, that out in Wyoming. So we've had electoral victories, and we need to continue to work to that. But the way you get those victories is by being visible in the community. And we can take advantage of a lot of things by being visible. And that's how you get those electoral victories. That's how you build those coalitions, is by being out and about. As I'm the chair of the Libertarian Party of Atlanta, one of the things we've committed to do is we've adopted a park in our city, and we go out once a month and we clean our local park. We're visible. We wear libertarian shirts. We make sure we say hi to anybody that's at the park. We let them know what we're doing and why we're there, that we think that this park deserves to be maintained and looking good, and the state and the city never really take good care of this particular park. And so we go out and pick up the garbage, because we realize that the government's not going to do it. And so we take it upon ourselves to do that. And we hope to lead by example. And charity work, working in your community, those are great ways to introduce yourself to a whole new group of people, and also just do some good work at the same time. And in addition to that, there's also political action. When there is a march for criminal justice reform, we don't need to shy away from it because there might be some other people in the crowd who are not completely politically aligned with us. If they're for criminal justice reform, they're with us on that issue. And we need to let them know that they're with us on that issue, so that they don't boogeyman us. They don't make us think that we're the other.
Right.
We need to recognize that we are all of us regardless of our political affiliation, there is a need to fight authoritarianism. There's a need to fight authority. And frankly, if I'm at a Black Lives Matter march and there are Marxists there, right? Ooh, Marxists, right?
Yeah.
Well, maybe I talk to one of them and maybe they're a libertarian a year from now. And now I have a new ally, somebody who's come from that area who says, you know what? This isn't the way to go. You know me, guys. You know me. I came from this and now I've seen a different path. And that's how you grow the party. You cannot be afraid of engaging. Yep. And that's a message that I think you guys at the Vermin Supreme Institute do an awful lot of as well. And that's something that I think we should continue to do as a party and as a movement.
Yeah, I mean, one of the biggest things that you touched on it perfectly. You know, criminal justice reform, I think, is a very easy lead-in to anti-authoritarianism. I mean, if you look at even the history of policing in some of its early stages, where you're literally protecting private property for very wealthy citizens or slave catchers, and that's where a lot of police institutions started. And you see how that can be brought into the modern era, where a lot of the laws and kind of system is stacked up against racial minorities and people that are misrepresented in upper levels of government. And you're seeing that, even as a straight white male, I am still not quite as represented as a millionaire straight white male. There's I'm the best represented person in Congress, and it's still not a close representation to the regular person. Now, every single person that is not a straight white dude is completely underrepresented. There's nowhere near the total. If you look at the pie chart of America, you don't see the representation of the American population that you do, you don't see that in Congress whatsoever. So it becomes a very easy conversation for me to start talking about criminal justice reform and lead into, asking the question, why do we need these levels of government above us that are really imposing their will upon, the regular citizens of the world?
And then, the other reason why I focus so much on criminal justice reform in my race in particular is, I am in a major metropolitan area. There is a large number of minority groups. There's a large number of people who are economically disadvantaged, who are on the lower rung of the economic ladder. And to them, they are the ones who are most primarily affected by these criminal justice issues. Now, our presidential candidate took a lot of heat for saying that you don't have to just be not racist, you have to be actively anti-racist. Right. I understand that because I live in a major metropolitan area. I understand what that means. That means that you do have to speak to these issues, and that when you do speak to those issues, you let Black and brown people, you let poor people know that we in the Libertarian Party are standing with them on those issues. Mm-hmm. You cannot say we need to have a broader coalition of people, man. We need to have more people. I don't understand why people just aren't crazy about this issue. Well, it's because a lot of the issues we talk about don't primarily affect people who are extremely poor, right, or it's not connected to them in a way that is super visceral that they understand on a real basis. Like inflation and monetary policy, that affects everybody, right?
Yep.
But it doesn't affect you the way racially motivated policing or systemically racist courts affect somebody who is poor or a person of color, right? Those things viscerally affect them. They understand a lot more. It's a lot easier to explain. Well, yeah, this crooked police system gets me thrown in jail more, disproportionately compared to my neighbors who are either more economically advantaged or a different skin hue than me, right?
Right.
That's easy for someone to tie themselves to. That's Absolutely. An easy message for us to have. And so we do have to be actively against those systems of authority which affect other people at a greater ratio. And we should not be afraid of saying that. There is nothing wrong with saying that.
Yep.
And I just don't. And that is an area where, it's empathy. It is common empathy. And that is something that, again, I was super proud of, of my vote for president and vice president. And a lot of that has to do with the message of empathy that Spike Cohen championed, both in the primaries and as a candidate, and still today, just as a private, just as a regular guy now, and he's no longer running for office. So that's a message that I want to carry, is that libertarianism can be empathic, because we are fighting for the little guy, and the little guy is the individual, every individual, against giant spheres of authority.
Yeah. No, that's very well said. And I think it's funny. I saw recently I don't even remember if it was a post on Instagram or something like that. It said, if you look at the fine system of America, if a law is it basically, if breaking the law turns into a fine, then it is immediately economically biased, because you're disproportionately hurting anyone who cannot afford to pay that fine. They will be put in jail eventually and go through the criminal justice system, which we know doesn't, do a good job of kind of actually helping someone grow and change out of whatever behavior that they wanted to change into good behavior. It just doesn't do that. It's turned into a for-profit kind of churn. So.
Yeah, and I think one of the most important messages about that is, once you get stuck in that prison to probation cycle, yep, it is very, very hard to get out. And that's another reason why I ran on criminal justice in Georgia, is because it is so crazy and backwards here. If you look at the rate of probation, if you tie probation and imprisonment and all the different kinds of forms of criminal detention of all, yep, kinds, house arrest, all that stuff, Georgia is way higher than the national average. We're actually one of the highest in the world because of our probation practices. So many people get stuck on probation and then they lose the right to vote. And that actually is something that the powers that be, the duopoly, kind of want. They want to suppress a certain number of people from, yep, voting, because it's easier to control if the voting rates are like 50%. If only half the eligible voters are voting, well, it's easier to spend billions of dollars to target to just them, to, yeah, suppress the votes of the other people, to make people feel like there is nothing for them out there. And then they do media blackout any non-third party, any non-duopoly candidate. And that is by design. Oh yeah. And that is why I appreciate, as a libertarian, there is a certain streak of libertarians who understand that we do have to, not only do we have to be a political party who's running candidates and who is, actively representing the liberty movement, but we also have to disrupt the system by invading the system and by joining basically these groups and these movements that need to have libertarian voices. Another big one in Georgia is the housing. Eminent domain is a big deal. We have Keisha Lance Bottoms. Keisha Lance Bottoms is by any definition a dictator. That's what she is, because she wants to use the power of government. She took the people of Peoplestown in Atlanta. She took their homes away because they needed to build a park and a retaining pond for the wealthy white residents down the road. And that's ridiculous. Anytime someone tries to say that Keisha Lance Bottoms is someone who believes in civil rights or stands up for the Black community, I can't jive with that, because I know that there are people who have lost their homes, the places they lived in for a generation, the place their parents lived before them. Right. They are not allowed to live there anymore because government said, nope, we got to build a Zen park, in Atlanta. And that continues to happen. We're about to have the Goat Farm, which is an artist enclave. It's where they filmed a lot of The Walking Dead. It is an artist collective. It's about to be torn down. Why? So they can build another mixed use land development here in Atlanta, because frankly, they want to kick people out of what's theirs and where they've been for a long period of time. And it sickens me that happens, not just in Atlanta, but in cities across the country. We need to be on the side of those people. We need to be out there. When they're out there outraged that they're getting kicked out of their homes, we need to be out there outraged because they're getting kicked out of their homes. Yeah. That is what is most important. If we want to talk about what's going to grow this party, it's actually taking action and doing the things that we need to do. It sickens me so much that so many people are like, why aren't we growing as a party? Well, when's the last time you got out and marched? Right. When's the last time you went out and you were at a city council meeting and you were saying, you know what, we don't need to be spending this money on this. We don't need to be spending so much money on our police department. Maybe we need to be spending more money on, or returning money back to the citizens. Right. That's something that we need to be doing. You have to be people of action, especially if you are outside the duopoly. You know why? Because they've made it that way. We're running a race, right? That's what all elections are. Elections are a race, right? There's a finish line. Now, what happens when you're a Republican or a Democrat, you have a smooth path down that race, 100 straight meters down to the finish line. Right. When you're a third party candidate, you got landmines, you got spikes, you have Legos in your barefoot, you have to run through that. But you still have to make it to the end. And that's going to require a little bit of extra effort. We have to put in the extra effort. You know why? Because we're not established. We're not the people in power. And the way to take down the power is to work harder than them. Yeah. I cannot deal with lazy libertarians.
Yeah.
I'm involved, and people need to get involved.
Absolutely. Yeah, I know. I echo a lot of your statements there. I think that's the way to do it. And I think, like you were saying too, like, when people are facing that adversity in their city or town or whatever, going and door knocking and talking to them. I know Spike has talked about it a bunch of times when he was on the campaign trail. He actually went and talked to people that lived in some low income neighborhoods or some neighborhoods that were changing due to gentrification, and just tried to understand where they're coming from and what their issues are, so that he could approach them with maybe a libertarian point of view, or at least an anti-authoritarian point of view that really helps them get to where they need to. I think I say it often when talking about a lot of my progressive Dem friends that I have. We have the same goals typically. We just have different ways of getting there. We think that it's better off left to the small communities and the people to help solve problems locally. They're going to know how their neighbor needs help. They're, someone that sits in the Capitol, hundreds of miles away in some states, they're going to know a lot less about how your neighbor needs help than you are. And I think that's really the message that I'd like to see driven, throughout the Libertarian Party, is that community base is so important. I think we've lost a lot of it because we look to our governments to fix the problem. If there is, a bad road, everyone talks about the roads with libertarians. There's a bad road in one place in the neighborhood. Everyone looks towards the government. It takes a couple of years. Taxes have to go up. It's mismanaged. The person that they hire to do it, there's no incentive to do it the best way, the right way, the way that's going to be the quickest, most efficient way. So we get, subpar kind of results from that. And that's the road, that's just kind of a joke with the road stuff. But there are real problems in the community that could be solved a lot better by people who really know what the issues are. And I'd love to see us kind of break through and really get to the point where we're influencing more community action, like I said, mutual aid programs, those types of things, just, locally in your community.
And you can communicate those messages to progressives in a way of like, I totally agree with you. We agree what the problem is, but the solution is a little different. Progressive parents and libertarian parents want their kids to go to a good school and get a good education and be prepared for their life. That's all parents want that, right? Yep. Progressive parents and progressive people and libertarian people, they would like when they get sick to be able to go to a good doctor and get the care that they need. And if they're, if their loved ones are ill, they want them to be able to go get a good, to go to a good doctor and receive good care. So the truth is we all want the same things. The truth, but the messaging is a little different, and then we have to say things like, what is going to provide a better outcome for your child? Is it going to be you primarily making those decisions and you having more control over where they go? Or is it allowing someone who doesn't know your child? Who is going to make the best healthcare decision for you? Is it going to be you and your doctor who's actually in the room with you, who knows you? Or is it going to be someone who's far away, who has no idea who you really are, and you're just a number on a page? And so that's the message that we have to have. Yeah. We can message that to the progressive left. And in fact, that's the mind that we really need to be going for right now. The Republican Party, that conservative base, is shrinking. Yeah. And we really need to be talking to the growing base, the growing activist base, the young people who are getting ready to be ready and regular voters. Those are the people we need to be messaging to right now. And a lot of them are from the progressive left. And we have to find ways to teach, not to teach them, but to message to them that liberty is really the answer. And that's where we're going to get it. That's where you're going to get the good healthcare. That's where you're going to get the good schools. That's where you're going to get the good life. That's where you're going to get the good job, is if we look to freedom and liberty and not to government control. And so I think we can make that message to the left and to the right, honestly, in a way that's palatable. But we really, over the last number of years, have done a better job of messaging to those who have kind of fallen out of the love with the right side of the political duopoly. Right. And not enough with those who have fallen out of love with the left side. So I think we can continue to do that. And one way we do that, and this is what I would say to everybody, is we have to stop. If somebody is a Democrat, there's a good chance they're not a communist. Okay? That's just the truth. Right. If someone's voting Democrat, there's a good chance they're voting Democrat because their parents voted Democrat. They think they like the jive of that candidate. He talks really good. He's young. Well, not not this time, but
Mhm.
he's whatever, he
Yeah.
or she.
Yeah.
It's a lot of times it's the personality of the people that they're falling for, right? And
Yep.
so we need to understand that we can communicate with Democrats and Republicans without completely demonizing them. Now,
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
are there abhorrent, terrible people in the duopoly? Absolutely. And once they reveal themselves, you can absolutely say, okay, well, I'm going to disassociate from you and go to try to steal votes
Yeah.
and contributions and people from other parts of your base, and just leave your trashiness to your trash and just let you guys fall into the dustbin of history, and let your parties die, because that's what we're trying to do here. We're trying to win.
Oh, yeah.
Uh, and we're trying to show that we have the message, and the best message, and that this is the way. This is how we get it. And yeah, I hope those of us who are paying attention see who is working hard within this party, and who is just spinning their wheels and continuing the same fights and reliving and relitigating the battles, the internal party battles from like 2 or 3 or 5 years ago.
Right.
There are those of us who are forward thinking in the Libertarian Party,
Yeah.
and there's those of us who are like, you know what, I'm content to be right where I'm at. And we need to recognize who those people are and work with the former and distance ourselves from the latter.
Yeah. And there's a saying I hear often, and I completely agree with, is we are never going to win elections if every single libertarian votes for libertarians. We will still never win. Not maybe never, but we aren't going to right now. We need to pull in from, like you said, from the Democratic Party, from the Republican Party, from progressives, from leftists. I mean, I know, a bunch of ANCOMs and LibSocs that voted for Joe Jorgensen and Spike Cohen. They really, jived with Spike's message and thought that, this was the right step, at least towards anti-authoritarianism. And I think that, I do have more, I guess, radical anti-authoritarian or anarchist ideas, but I do understand that there's only so much that you could do. So Spike Cohen and Joe Jorgensen get in tomorrow. There's a certain set of things that they can do without congressional approval and things like that, and all of those things really would jive with heading in the right direction. And I think that's a big piece of the I guess entryism from either side, or from any political background, or politically homeless folks that want to come in and listen to the ideas. And I've always said, at the end of the day, the idea is going to win the conversation. If you have a really good idea and you're not aggressive with the way that you present it towards someone, you actually are sitting there listening to them and understanding what they need, what they're looking for an answer, and you provide the solution that is, more libertarian or more anti-authoritarian. I think that really is beneficial, and I think that's something that people can learn from, watching folks like Spike Cohen, and I think the other way of doing it, and this is a personal favorite of mine, is Vermin Supreme. I think bringing in with comedy, I think there's a big kind of stuffiness that is surrounded, massive political parties, and we have to be different. We have to think different, and I think there's some value there as well. We, with VSI, we do the Disrupt the Vote group, and we had a candidate who ran for mayor in Cranston, Rhode Island. He had to run on the Democratic ticket to get ballot access, basically, to get in. The first message out of his mouth during the debates was he is a libertarian. And he said that in a full hot dog suit with a cowboy hat on his head. And obviously, there was a lot of laughs. It was a very different experience. But the articles that were written afterwards and the comments underneath that debate on Facebook were, why is the guy in the hot dog suit making the most sense? Why is this guy got the best ideas on here and he's in a hot dog suit? Like, people actually wanted to hear what he had to say because of the ridiculousness. And I don't think that's for every single person. No. But I think that is an effective way of at least getting people to open their eyes to different ideas and opinions. And I think it's fun. I think it makes what can be a boring or drawn out or just laborious kind of process, it turns it into something that's a little more enjoyable to work on and do.
And so, that's kind of the, the great kind of ideological argument divide. People say pragmatism or radical. I tell people all the time that, I joke all the time, I'm a member of both caucuses. And I consider myself I don't know if it's a radical pragmatist or a pragmatic radical. But the truth is that I think that there is a time and a place, certainly for more radical messaging. And there's a time and a place to understand that there is steps to get where we want to be, right? Like we didn't fall into tyranny overnight. It did just happen. It took a lot of steps to get there. It's going to take a lot of steps to get out. But at the end of the day, you can preach a radical message of where we're going to get there, right? Yep. Like this is where the mountaintop is. Like we're going for the mountaintop. This is the end game. This is what we're looking for. But this is how we understand how we're going to get there. You can do both. You can have a radical message, but you can also pragmatically explain how you're going to get there and how you as a candidate, if I were to win, a 2-year term in Congress, these are the steps I can take in this 2 years that I can do as one member of Congress in a body of 400, to get these things done, right? Yep. So there's a way to do both. And as far as humor and levity in the race, I think it helps to be someone who is genuine. Whether you're someone who has a great sense of humor and who is amorous and loves to make people laugh, or whether you're someone who is a little bit more serious, you need to be who you are. You need to be authentic. Authenticity, I think, is the most important thing. I will say this right now. I'm not the person who is going to read a prepared speech. You can definitely tell I'm reading it. But if you want to talk to me, I'll just talk to you off the cuff all day long. That's where I'm authentic. So the way my campaigning style is I write 5 or 6 bullet points and then I go. And that's how I'm comfortable communicating. Some people are much more comfortable getting that messaging down to a T, being able to communicate in a way that is like a razor's edge, just gets right where it needs to go. There are people who do both, and then there are people who are like Vermin, who waken people up through mirth and laughter. And I tell people all the time, he's kind of the Mark Twain of the Liberty movement. He's an eccentric. Everybody knows who he is. He kind of always wears the same uniform. He's kind of like a mad genius kind of a guy. And there's definitely a place for him in this movement. That is something that, and I have total respect for Vermin Supreme. And you can ask a lot of my friends who knew me at the beginning of the 2020 primary process. I was not sold on Vermin Supreme until I met him in person. I met him and I was like, this guy's a genuine, nice guy. I was still a John Mons guy up until the bitter end in that race. But I respect Vermin Supreme, and I respect the people that he brings in the party. I respect the energy that he brings in this party. We need that energy. We need that. That's part of that activism that I'm talking about. Yep. And if people want to, and I'll message this to all my friends who are maybe on the pragmatic side, like myself, who maybe feel like we need more pragmatism. Well, then you got to get out there and you got to do it. The Vermin Supreme folks, they're out there doing it. They're out there doing their thing. And we need all hands on deck. We need all members of the party. We need all sections of the party to be all hands on deck. Imagine how much we could do if we had the energy and the drive, some of our most ardent activists. If we could just move that from a few dozen or maybe 100 people to like 500 or 1,000 people across the country, we could make real lasting changes at every level of government. If we just, had the initiative to get out there and do it. And at the end of the day, we have to stop complaining about the world we live in now. We have to start working for the world we want to live in tomorrow. And that is, we have to stop being so negative. And that part of that is disconnect from social media. Who gives a crap what's going on Facebook or Twitter? I really, I try to, I'm like everybody else. I'm stuck on Facebook. I have a screen in front of me a lot. But I've been actively trying to say, you know what, for all the time that I'm going to spend on a screen and wasting time with that, I'm also going to commit to finding time to work on actual things. So I work very closely with our national chair. He's a great guy. We have an awesome LNC. Everybody works pretty well together for the most part. And we have the chance to do really good things as a party if we just take the time to work together, to understand what our goals are, and to work towards those, using and utilizing the talents that each of us bring to the table. And I think that's something that as a party we have to understand. We have to stop fighting each other, because as long as we're continuing and fighting inward, we're never fighting the state outward. Yep. And that's really the goal, right? Yep. That's what our statement of principles is all about. It doesn't say on the platform, this is to determine who is the most libertarian, and we're going to we're playing musical chairs, and we're going to have one, we're not Highlander. There is not only one.
Right.
There's many kinds of libertarians. And
Yeah.
I am happy to know many different types of libertarians.
Same here. And I think it's going to take all of us. I mean, I think getting that messaging out to every different, group of people is going to take every different type of group of people within the party. You know what I mean? I think there are some people that will hear a message better from someone with a tie on. I think there are some people that will hear the message better from someone with a boot on their head. I think there's a great space for many different voices to try and help, fix what are some of the issues that we're facing, and do so passionately. I don't think there's someone that's, say, a champion of criminal justice reform, and really, the economic stuff is important, but it's just not their forefront of their brain. They're not going to be a good messenger of the economic changes that we want to see. They're going to be a really good messenger of the criminal justice reform. And I just really think that if we enable people to do what they're passionate about, and to really go after the groups of people who are also passionate about those things, I think that's where we win. I think that's where we just really start bringing in more people to understand. And like I said, it's all about hearing the plan. If we have good ideas, it will work. If we don't have good ideas, something else will work. I believe in kind of free market thought, in free thought. I want people to think for themselves and not come into the Libertarian Party because our cult is the best cult. That's what we have with the duopoly. I want them to come in because the ideas are there, and they're the right way that move forward without having people telling, anti-authoritarian ideas, without people having this hierarchy of someone telling them what to do.
And not just that the ideas are there, but that there's an environment to welcome the growth of new ideas, and the welcome to welcome different perspectives. That's something we need as a party for growth, for sure.
Absolutely.
And I think we can provide that. I think as a party we're starting to see more of that. And you're right, we do need to refuse entryism a little bit, and we also need to go where your strengths are. Like you said, if you know about criminal justice reform, like Ricky Harrington, Arkansas Senate candidate this time around, former prison chaplain. If you want to talk to a guy about the effects of the criminal justice system, about what prison does to people, he's a great person to talk to, because he's a former prison chaplain. He's been in the room. He's been counseling people who are stuck in that system and who feel the frustration of what it means to be stuck by the state in a system where they lose their liberty, they lose their right to vote, they lose so many things. And so he's an excellent communicator of that. If you want to talk about maybe disability advocates, Thomas Daniel Queter in New York, he's an amazing advocate for what we can do when we put ourselves in the area of responsibility for taking care of other people, and not just simply relying on only the government, just some far off, far away government to do it. And you know what? Let's ignore the disabled. Let's ignore those areas of sight because government's got it, right? No, he's the first person to tell you that is a message that needs to change, and he's a great advocate for that message. We need to be utilizing our talent where they can go, and people need to recognize that we need talent. We need to fill our bench. Like I said, if we could go from 100 dedicated activists to 1,000 to 10,000, there's the sky is the limit and beyond. And I think I feel very positive about where we're moving as a party. And when you talk about ideas, the Gary Johnson in 2016, he was always like 50 laboratories of innovation, right? Well, we could be thousands of laboratories of innovation if we're just kind enough to each other to recognize that just because we don't agree with each other 100% doesn't make us enemies. And in fact, disagreement sometimes sharpens our argument. I think, and this is one of the reasons why I was so happy to go speak to so many forums that were, as a candidate, that were Democratic leaning, many of whom were like the Black Chamber of Commerce, the Young Black Voters, people where I was literally the only white guy in the room. Why did I like to go there? Because it sharpens my arguments like a knife to a wet stone. That's what we need. You have to be there in the room, be present, and be going for it. And I think if there's one thing I can encourage anybody who watches or listens to this podcast, it is get out there and get it done, because no one's going to do it for you. We all know as libertarians, the government's not going to do it for us. So who's there other than the government, right? Us. We have to do it. And so it's up to us to get out and do it. It's going to be, some people are disappointed in the vote totals that we had for president and vice president this time around. I can talk all day about why that happened, why we're at where we're at. But what I can tell you is I'm going to be dedicated any states that lost ballot access because we had a step back from where we were in 2016, I'm dedicated to helping fight to get back to that, because we're going to have 50 states plus DC and Guam and the Virgin Islands and wherever the heck else we can get ballot access in 2024 if I can help it. Yep. That's because I'm going to be present and I'm going to be on the ground and I'm going to be doing things. And I think other people need to do that as well. And sometimes, and it's not just activists. We do need donors too. We need people who have money. There are people who have means but don't have the means to actually get out there and be a boot on the ground. And you know what they can be? They can be the people who help support the people on the ground. That's what we need. There's a place for everybody in this movement. We just need to recognize who is where they're going to be most effective, and who we can coalition with to really bring the message out. Like I said, housing justice is great if you live in a rural area. Talking about farm issues and rural issues are very important. Let's talk about what a cash crop hemp, industrial hemp can be in the breadbasket of America, where there's farmers suffering all over, because they don't have a crop that grows unless they do government subsidized crops like corn, right? And then you have corn. Government pays you to grow the corn. The corn is cheap, so they make corn syrup out of it. Makes fatty, sugary sodas, and now they want to tax those to help fight obesity. And it's like, well, why are you subsidizing the corn then, right? And you're forcing farmers to have to grow a crop they don't really want to grow. But it's the only way they can survive. And if we, there's issues we could talk about all over the country.
Oh, absolutely.
We need to find those messengers, though. That's the thrust. I'm ranting a little bit, but that's the thrust. Is we need to find the right messengers for those issues. We need to speak to the issues of the people in our local communities. We want local solutions. We need local messengers.
Yeah, and I think, back to a little bit to the part about the vote totals too. I think it was a really big positive step. And I know I might get killed for saying that, but the fact that we ran libertarian activists in the Libertarian Party made me smile. I think that kind of set a new standard, a new, level. And the next time we run, if we do fall below that mark, then there was an issue, and we need to understand that. But right now, we're working within our party with activists within the party to be the party leaders, to be the national image of the party. I think that was a good bar to be set, and I think we need to look to do as much as we can to be better next time. And I think that there's a big benefit in an energizing piece. It's kind of an intangible benefit that you have now activists excited because they realize that they can help their party internally, and they don't have to come from one of the duopoly parties to, get the exposure or whatever. We can do the work. I know we were underexposed this year. I know it was a tough year and we didn't hit the marks that we hoped for, but I do think that it's a great step forward.
And I think that is a great thing that we didn't have somebody who, and I will say, I think if you look at where our vote totals were, we're at almost 2 million. We're at 1.8, nearing 1.9 million, right? That is a good sign that we are on the 2016 is a very much of an outlier of an election. It is because we had Hillary Clinton, who you can say what you want about Joe Biden. Hillary Clinton was way more unpopular than Joe Biden.
Absolutely.
As kooky and old as he is, Hillary Clinton was just loathed by anybody that was outside of the Democratic establishment. And then you had Donald Trump, who was this unknown game show host. So you had this really outward open thing. And then you had two former governors. So you had this kind of sign of stability from the third party, which is ironic, right? Like normally the third party is the guy that's like, who's this guy, right? But these guys had, and there was an outside influence on media wanting to give influence to the third party, I think, because I think some people thought, hey, this will take Republican votes. It'll secure Hillary's landslide victory. And that ended up getting us a really great vote total in 2016. It was lightning in a bottle. Now what we need to do is we need to recognize that we are still building from the 2012 vote total, the 2008 vote total before that. We're actually showing an upward trend, and we need to keep up the climb. It's like, you ever seen Price is Right, right? Like the little guy on the mountain. That's what we need to be doing. We just need to keep chugging our way up the mountain until we win. And we're going to get there eventually. We will have libertarian legislators. We will have libertarian people in our government who are providing that legislative crossbench. When we start having a libertarian senator or a few libertarian members of the House, we're going to create a legislative crossbench where both sides are going to have to come to the table and say, what can we offer the libertarians to get their votes? Like, what are we going to be able to, what issues can we put on the forefront? They're going to guarantee us we can get that bill victory. so that we can all have a nice little signing. Like, what's going to get the libertarians in the room happy?
Right.
It's something that is done in countries across the world. And the way we get there, and this is an issue that's very important right now, is ranked choice voting.
Oh, yeah.
And it is an issue that we are fighting for in the Libertarian Party of Georgia right now, because we have two, you may have heard, we have 2 Senate runoffs going on in Georgia right now.
Yep.
I know the duopolies are spending like $500 million or something like that to get the message out that there's an election in January.
Yeah.
And in doing so, we have a very expensive runoff. We have all this extra. Nobody wants to see 2 more months of ads. So we have this great opportunity as a third party to start selling the idea of, why didn't we just have an instant runoff like the night of the election?
Right.
We would already know who has the Senate. We wouldn't have to deal with 2 months of this bullshitting and Rudy Giuliani with his press conference and all this stuff. Like, we would already know. And that would be that, right? So we now have a chance to say, this is a way to make our elections cheaper, right?
Absolutely.
Feel that fiscal conservative. This is a way to expand participatory democracy, to say there are now more options on the table for you to vote for. And also, it's a way to help stop voter apathy, which is a big problem in Georgia. We have so many elections and so many runoffs that if you just look at the turnout drop off in a runoff, it's ridiculous, right? And even in my special election, we had like under 100,000 people, like under 60,000 people voting in the largest district in the state, like in the most population dense rather. So yeah, ranked choice voting is what we're fighting for, and we need more participatory democracy, and that's the way we're going to really start seeing a world set free in our lifetime. But we have to work for it. It's not going to come to us, as much as we'd just love it to be like a gift on Christmas morning. It's not going to be like that. We have to work hard. We're the generation. I want everybody who's in the Libertarian Party right now to understand, you are the movement that is going to create a libertarian mainstream next generation. That's what you are. You are those people. You are the power that is going to make the libertarian moment. Like, that's what we are. And we need to recognize that and continue to work for that. And I feel really, really excited about where we're going and how we're going to get there.
Yeah, same here. No, that was a great way to wrap it up, I think. No, I completely agree. I think there's a big movement right now happening where people are expecting change, and I think we can be the messengers to help them get there. And I think, like I said, it's all about the plan and the ideas. I think we have a really good opportunity to be there. So no, thank you very much, Chase. It was great having you. I love talking with you always. And I hope you have a great night.
Hey, you too, man. And thank you very much for having me on. It's always a pleasure to talk to great folks like yourself.
Awesome. Thanks. All right. And that's what we have tonight for the Post Political Podcast. I hope you enjoyed the first episode. We have one more sponsor to run. This is the Vermin Supreme graphic novel. If you have an opportunity to go to verminsupreme.com, check out the Patreon. This will be released early to the folks in the Patreon. You'll have early access, and you'll be actually able to see some of the drafts and stuff that come out. So take a look, and thank you guys all for joining me. I really appreciate it. And leave comments or questions in the comment section. I'll take a look afterwards and see what I can improve on for next time. Have a great night.